flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Pleasure of the committee.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Denon, second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes, regular meeting, special meeting, regular meeting from 6/8, special meeting from 6/16. Executive session, do we not have access to those? So those are the ones that we don't have the folder for?
No.
Okay.
I think
You think we've...
we just have the regular meeting. The special meeting, Cindy received them, but I don't know if she put them online, if they were put online.
Oh,
That's the thing I'm not sure
it's
about.
the special meeting?
I can check. I wrote it.
Just give us a second here. And then the enrollment report from 7/1, school police report from 6/1, residency truancy report from 7/1.
Yes, they're there.
So they were all in the drive. So pleasure of the committee on the consent agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion by Mr. Salvatore.
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is report out of executive session from 7/14/2016. There were no votes taken. I need a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. Motion by Mr. Wood.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salvatore and a whole bunch of people over there. Mrs. Teal, any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. As you all know, there is a lot of activity involving professional development over the course of the summer, and I've asked Mr. Damana, Assistant Superintendent, to give a brief overview of some of the work that's taking place. I also thought it would be interesting for you all to hear about the summer boot camp, computer science boot camp that we have planned. He can give you a quick update on that, and then I'm going to have Mr. Prignano provide an update on where we are with all of the construction work that is taking place in several of our buildings this summer. So why don't we start with Mr. Damana.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, I want to talk to everyone about some exciting work that is going on both this summer and our professional development planning that we have prepared for teachers coming in August when everyone returns. So this summer we were very, very fortunate to have several teachers come forward to continue the mapping work that needed to be done. I'm anticipating and very anxious to get some of our maps up and live based on the work that's been going on. So several teachers stepped up, K-8, and at the K-5 level, the focus has been on math, just as I've provided you in your little short synopsis there that you have in front of you. It's been an intense and shared process between administrators and teachers, a reciprocal process where we go back and forth and we're vetting the work with one another, making sure that the changes are given from a teacher's perspective, a teacher's voice, but also that we know that the work makes sense and that it's ready to be implemented for students come the beginning of the school year. So there's been a lot of work in that. The teachers met this summer for math. My hope is that at the very beginning of the school year for elementary, our K-5 math maps will be up and running. Also at the middle school level, grades 6 through 8, English language arts has been our focus, and we've been creating a new framework for English language arts. We currently use expeditionary learning as our main framework, and what we're doing is we're revamping that, and we sort of rethought that. So if you kind of think of modules, 3 modules or units of study that happen throughout the course of the year, what we wanted to do was include more reading for students. We need to get kids reading more because of the Common Core standards. So teachers are creating this summer or continuing to create short story units, which basically they're small modules that support the larger modules of study that provide students with more opportunities to read. And what we're doing is we're framing that around literary elements. So, for example, point of view or theme. So if that's the real enduring knowledge that we want kids to know in grade 6, and we know that PARC and the Common Core Standards values those things, then we're designing our curriculum framework around that, and everything is connected to those things. And teachers are working diligently to make that a seamless process. Our next big project, and by the way, the ELA framework will hopefully go live because of this summer work. So in math, elementary, ELA, big project. Hopefully we can go live with that at the very beginning of the school year as well to get us started. In music and art, we're in pretty good shape. Those should be live at the very beginning of the school year. I have some work to do with PE, and we're going to be moving on. At the elementary level, we'll be shifting our focus to ELA, and at the middle school level, we'll be shifting our focus to math. Okay? As it says here, assessment revision will be huge for our next focus. That's a big project in and of itself. We need to really pay close attention to how we're assessing students and making sure that they're meaningful and aligned to the standards. One bit that I'm pretty excited about that happened this summer with regard to SRSD, I'm sure you've heard the superintendent talk about self-regulated strategy development. Our writing initiative district-wide, it is expanding from the elementary out into the middle school, and we starting to break ground on what it may look like at the high school level. So we had one of our 9th grade ELA teachers, language arts teachers, join in professional development for SRSD so that she can start to under profile of a student, K-8, that would arrive on her doorstep come in 9th grade, and what that's going to entail, because we need to start having those transitional conversations between 8th and 9th grade and 5th and 6th grade, and what those expectations look like, because we don't want teachers saying that we have certain expectations over here at the high school, and yet academically, do we see them being prepared for that rigor at the middle school level and at the elementary level. So we're trying to make that cohesion happen, and we're starting to have very important conversations around that. We also have some computer science training that's happening at the middle school level this summer. It's going on at BF Norton. We've partnered up with Project Lead the Way, and Computer Science 1 and 2, there are 3 teachers that are participating in the training. Project Lead the Way paid for, I believe, 2 of the teachers, but I wanted to sort of set up a sustainable network where if there's movement in the district, that we have additional people trained to supplement for that movement, so that we have enough people ready to teach these things to the students. Okay? In reference to the computer science boot camp under the superintendent's leadership, we were able to organize a boot camp that includes grade 2 students all the way on up to high school. There are 2 teachers at the elementary level with 2 sections being taught. Coding is being taught there. At the middle school level, we also have 2 teachers that are going to be involved in teaching some computer science topics. And then at the high school level, they're infusing some robotics. And I believe, you may know a little bit more about this, but I believe at the high school level, the offering was they were trying to figure out how to offer sort of a half a credit for students to be involved that were transitioning from 8th into 9th grade. So Alan was instrumental in driving that and making that available. That sort of sums up the summer work, which there's, again, a lot of work going on. I'll shift over to professional development on the 26th and 29th. But before I do that, do any of you have any questions for me regarding the summer work?
Questions? So I do have a question about the topic that you had mentioned about addressing the gap from 8th to 9th grade.
Yes.
Where specifically are we with that? What have we realized so far with that, or is it something that we're starting over the summer?
So prior to me coming into the position, there were conversations that were already happening with Mrs. Butash in looking at the writing specifically through the standards and looking at the English language arts curriculum. And in particular, they had mentioned that writing was really one of those big pieces that they wanted to look at. So since we have SRSD as a foothold in the district and we're working with, Dr. Leslie Laud, what I want to do is organically have her sort of consult on the issue and start to listen to those conversations of teachers. And the thinking was if we can get one of our involved and at the table, we can start to have those more specific conversations around that content and really dive into getting the work actually done. So shifting from just talking about it to what are we going to do about it, and actually operationalizing it.
Thank you. I know that there's definitely been discussion about as kids move from elementary to middle school, there's always that sink sometimes before you swim.
Yes.
Or walk before you can run. And we also hear about it at the high school level. So I think, some of this bridge work is excellent. I would also want to know about the overall expectations, how homework changes, how expectations around study skills change, because I imagine all of those impact
come into
all
play.
of the subjects that
That's right.
kids are involved with. Yeah. Mrs. Teal.
We had our meetings in curriculum and achievement.
Yes.
Sorry. When we talked at a curriculum and achievement, there was a lot of discussion about science and how we needed to step it up and improve those scores also.
Yes.
What's going on this summer for K through 12 with science?
So science, we've been working with GEMSNet, and you'll see that in the professional development that we've staged for the 26th and 29th. GEMSNet and science professional development is going to be the crux of what's happening. So I'll address that in a second in a little bit more detail.
And how about on inquiry-based learning? That was like a big weakness in science. Is that going to be addressed?
Yeah, that's part of it. GEMSNet, who is sort of our professional development provider when it comes to science and the next generation science standards, they provide that high level of professional development, and I'm actually working with them on starting to plan February's professional development. I've moved on from the beginning of the year, and I'm now starting to think about February.
Okay.
And that'll be embedded and continual. So inquiry-based instruction and inquiry-based, it has to be embedded in the daily instruction. That's an ongoing professional development topic that should really never go away.
Okay.
Okay?
And finally, I had a question about, hold on. Now I'm going to think about it in about 2 minutes.
It's okay. You can ask
Sorry
me whenever
about
it comes
that.
to
I'll ask you another question offline. Thanks.
Sure. So moving on to the August 26th and 29th professional development. It's already set. We sent it out to teachers just days after the school year ended. That was one of my goals, is to make sure that teachers knew what was going on well in advance. So we were successful in doing that, and it is highly differentiated, meaning all areas are receiving some content-specific professional development. Dr. Santa was again instrumental in helping us get some really solid professional development for our special educators, our nurses, and support personnel. Topics include coding. We are going to be doing some coding professional development as we start to look at our media positions. We want to bring that as part of our professional development. So coding is going to be going on. We have some people signed up for that, which I'm excited about. The next generation science standards in professional development. We are retaining one kit that we have. So in other words, one unit of study teachers will have already had taught this upcoming year, and they are going to be receiving professional development in a new unit of study, a new kit that have been up to standards. So in the next year, we'll be adding and we'll be fully NGSS aligned, where everyone will be teaching 3 science units of study: earth science, physical science, and life science will be the 3 main areas. GEMSNet is also going to help us curriculum map that out and give us a scope and sequence, so that'll also be live as well. That's the mapping and science piece. There is going to be SRSD work continuing. As I said, it's expanding out from the elementary school. We're working with Dr. Loud on a timeline right now on what that professional development will look like. There's also going to be a project-based learning, big professional development push on project-based learning at the middle school level. All middle school teachers will be heading over to the Northern Collaborative in Lincoln, and we have David Stephen, who is a nationally known person in the project-based learning realm, and he'll be providing 2 days worth of professional development to teaching teachers about what project-based learning is, and they'll be going through units of study to learn how to infuse it and embed it in what they're already doing. So a lot of the things that we're doing in professional development is not new initiatives. What I'm excited about is the fact that we're embedding and improving what we're already doing. Okay? So we're excited about that project-based learning work, and essentially that's a 21st century skill that is not new, that we should be doing at all levels, but we're targeting the middle school level, and specifically the enrichment block, a time where I've spoken with the administration about that will be a time when a lot of the project-based learning will be happening. Lexile and Quantile training. I promise I'm almost done. Lexile and Quantile training, they're units of measure that the Common Core Standards use, and our administrative team and our teachers are going to be receiving training. We need to have a common understanding of what those things are so that we can appropriately report out student measurements in both reading and in math. Quantiles are the equivalent for math, and Lexiles in reading. And just generally speaking, we want a larger emphasis on more reading in the district. ELA will be that main focus in K-5, as I had mentioned. We really need to do some digging into our curriculum there. We need to stay the course and continue to dive deeply, and this is a rigorous, laborsome process that's going to take a long time, but we need to stay the course, and the superintendent is supportive of that. Lastly, we're going to be looking intently at our Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. So our students who are sort of need some additional help, need some backfilling and some information, and those students who are really struggling. We need to look at those models and those systems and really make sure that we tighten them up and that we fix our Tier 1 so that we have fewer students leaking into that Tier 2 and Tier 3 level. So we're going to be looking at those systems. And for example, Mr. Denon, a while back you had mentioned Zern. You had brought up Zern, and I did a webinar recently on Zern, and it's a web-based Tier 1, Tier 2 system that has been designed specifically, to go along with Great Minds and Eureka Math. And I'm really excited about how the cohesion, teachers can embed it in their Tier 1, but it's also something that can help us in the Tier 2 realm, and it's directly connected to our curriculum. So I'm looking at bringing that in, and right now that's a free service that for students. There is a small fee for each principal to have certain accessibility to data, but actually implementing Zern into our curriculum would be free. And that's my update. A lot of stuff.
Questions? Mr. Denon?
Thank you. Thank you for the update. Can you talk a little bit about the AE changes? Basically, will students be working on projects? You sort of coupled it with the project-based learning, so that made me think of that.
So you would have to really, to get the real crux of the details on how the principals want to execute this, we'd have to bring in Beth and Dr. Masterson, Mrs. Coughlin, to talk about it. But basically, essentially, what we want to do is during that academic enrichment block is really focus students on a specific content area and say, okay, so here is a guiding question that we want you to problem solve. So whether you're a Tier 1 student or you're a struggling student, this is a standards-based way of approaching, and it gives students a different opportunity and a different approach to meeting a standard. Okay? And what the professional development is going to be about is to teach teachers how to execute that, not as something over and above, but as part of their curricular infrastructure. I don't know, it's still undecided on whether they're going to have all content areas do it, concentrate on one with everybody contributing to it. It's something that's still being thought out, and Beth has done a lot of thinking around it, and so has Dr. Masterson. But eventually the plan is to have it mirror the PBGR system at the high school level. So in 8th grade, there's some type of culminating activity where students are presenting to the superintendent or school committee members and mirroring that process at the high school level so that they've been exposed to that. And that's what I think I'm most excited about.
Thank you.
Mr. Salvatore?
Mr. D'Amato, thank you. This agenda looks great. My one question is, the following PD trainings that you're going to have, is it going to extend off of?
Yeah, we always want to build and go deeper. Build and go deeper. So we want to get away from initiative overload and really concentrate on things that they can work on with what we already have. We have some good things in place right now, and we don't want to change course. We want to stay the course, but dive very deeply, and I think that's what's going to create a trajectory of positive achievement.
Excellent. Also, Mr. Denon's on to Pokemon Go now, so I don't know if you want to expand on that later on in other PDs. So. Thank you.
Mrs. Teal.
Remembered my question. What about professional development around differentiation with computers? That was another
Blended
theme.
learning?
Yep, running through our meetings.
So right now, to simplify it, the way I view it is first we fix the what and then we focus on the how, right? So right now we're focusing on the what. Let's identify, let's brand ourselves as a school district. Let's get these maps up and rolling. We have a point of reference where we all know this is our curriculum, these are the skills we teach, and then as we start to build those Tier 2 and Tier 3 systems, that's where blended learning comes in. I see blended learning as something that fits into that Tier 1 and Tier 2, not so much the Tier 3. If I'm a really, truly struggling student, you want those students in front of teachers, right? You want small group instruction for those students and not necessarily doing independent study. So we need to build that infrastructure, and part of our Tier 2 work and Tier 1 work, blended learning is going to organically sort of permeate into that.
Will that ultimately lead to a, quote, gifted and talented curriculum or pathway for these students? I mean, we've talked about this for, oh my gosh, 10 years, 10 plus years of meeting these kids' needs.
Yeah, in an absolute standards-based world, as we continue to build this, because there's so many ways to approach standards-based instruction and learning, as we continue to evolve as a district, I think that our systems will organically evolve to where, you know, you have students at the middle school level, you have students taking geometry, right? You have that's happening. So I think as we become better and more adept at understanding the Common Core standards and how to get students to move through them quicker and at a higher pace, then our systems are going to have to evolve to support that. And I think it's going to happen organically.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? No? Thank you, Mr. D'Amato. That was great. Sounds like you're busy this summer. Mr. Mitchell, we have a summer construction projects update.
Yes, Madam Chair. As we discussed in our fiscal subcommittee meeting on Tuesday, we spent quite a bit of time having a conversation about where we are in that process, where we are in the schedule, and you know, we're pleased to report that we're right on schedule, that we are on budget. We were where we would hope to have been at this particular point in time. So a lot of really good work is being done. It's impressive how quickly everything is coming into place. Alex has some information that he wants to share with all of you regarding this project.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I passed out an Excel spreadsheet, but before I refer to it, we'll just say, you know, there is an awful lot of work going on in the district. Almost each school at Ashton, we have masonry work going on, as well as all the asbestos flooring being removed and new flooring being installed in the school. They are just about done with all the asbestos removal process, and the masonry work is well underway. They've, I guess there were a lot of areas where bricks were bowing out over windows and that type of stuff, and there was quite a bit of brickwork has been done at the school. If you go by there, you'll see it. They've done matching the brick and that type of stuff. But
I don't mean to interrupt, but we're sitting next to this colossal fan, and it's very hard to hear you. And
okay.
If you could just speak up a little bit.
Sure, I'll speak
Thanks.
up. So that pretty much covers Ashton. Community, there's work going on, as you know, in the front of the building. We are repaving the half semicircle where buses drop off students, as well as the parking area in front of there, where the nurse and the principal and other people park their cars. The sidewalks are all going to be replaced. We've got cement sidewalks going in rather than the paved, and it's just doing a lot of work there. We're in the process of painting all those exterior doors that are all in the front and the back. The way those classrooms line up, they have those exterior doors. Doors were kind of tired looking. They're all being repainted, as well as the excuse me, the foundation has all been painted. So it really looks pretty sharp, starting to come together over there. There's still, a lot of the big work to be done, but a lot of work going on down there, and the principal's very excited about, what's happening at our building. Cumberland Hill, we're replacing the gutters on the new gym and putting an ice system in that. And what they did, there was never a system put in for when ice slides down. It destroyed the existing gutters and pulled them all away from the building. So we're replacing those, and we're putting a system in so that it'll protect the gutters from being pulled away from the building. That's going on, as well as one of the projects we approved maybe a couple of months ago. We couldn't get in and do it till school was out, but as you know, 3 of our elementary schools have energy management systems. Cumberland Hill was one of the schools that didn't, so the Cumberland Hill's energy management system's going on, the wiring and all that sort of stuff that goes with that. And then BF Norton, the same thing. They're pulling wires, and BF Norton is as well to install the last of the energy management systems that will complete all our elementary schools having them. The middle schools, what's going on there with the new roof, the new EFIS at McCourt, the asbestos removal in all the schools, and the new ventilators at both North Cumberland and McCourt. We've had that the Excel spreadsheet pretty much shows you the first column, the budget that we had, $4,997,000, and shows you where we are now. We've run into some, we've run into some issues. For example, one of the things we have to work out is we don't think the wiring at McCourt is up to code now to support what we're doing in the building, so they think they can fix that at the box, though, and it won't be a big cost. We also ran into an issue with the EFIS system when we removed the old panels, the new panels that we got into, and it looked kind of like that finish that hotels have, up there now, like a Holiday Inn or, that type of sandy brown finish will be up there. But there was tar, like a tar material holding the old panels, and the vendor would not, if we just install the panels onto that tar, they wouldn't warranty the installation. So we've had to incur an additional, probably about $8,000 or $9,000 cost in putting brackets all around, and they've completed that work now, putting brackets so that the new panels can be adhered to, can be bracketed again onto the building. And North Cumberland, we ran into an issue where one of the lower levels, there's a lot of moisture when they removed all the floors, and I had to approve today them using an adhesive that's 100% moisture proof, so that we won't have tiles popping up. There was actually 90-95% tested moisture when they tested it. It was in the 90s. So we went. That's going to be about a $29,000 number. Everything but the $29,000 change orders or whatever little things we run into are all pretty much on that Excel spreadsheet. So we're still within budget, and and I'd say on time. And you can see, I won't read through all the items. It was for you to have it, but you can kind of see what the various things cost, from the EFIS and the roofing at McCourt to the ventilators and the installations or whatever.
Madam Chair,
questions
just,
I'm
just
happy.
one thing I think is important for the committee to know. One of the things that came up at our meeting on Tuesday was a drainage concern. A couple of the members of the school committee brought that up, and I just wanted to let everybody know that one of the things that we thought would be a good idea to do was to reach out to Bob Anderson, Public Works Director, and apparently that's been done. And Bob's been really helpful in helping us to figure out how to resolve the concern that we had. So, I think that problem has pretty much been resolved. But I just appreciate the collaboration with.
There were a couple. There was that system. I met with Bob today, and we resolved that, where we think we can just run underground additional piping into the drain that's right in the driveway anyhow, so we think we'll be okay with that, as long as we go deep enough and pitch it right so it goes into the drain. And the other issue, I asked Bob, he didn't do it today, but he said he'd take a look at it. It was we wanted to look at maybe painting some cautionary or stop type of signs in the high school parking lot, where we've had some accidents or close calls and that type of stuff. So he'll take a look at that. But
Mr. Salvatore?
So, real quick, not to beat a dead horse. So the drain came down at Community, and it was washing away the rocks
yeah, it used to just lay on top of the
underground.
rocks.
So now how's it going to be resurrected? It's not underground right now.
No, we're gonna dig it deeper underground, 12 to 18 inches,
The storm
preferably
sewer?
18 inches,
The storm sewer.
and we're gonna run it under that rock. That's kind of as you go in the building on the left-hand side, under that rock, and then to the street itself. We were going to just have it come out and empty into the street, and there was a concern it could be icy in the winter. So now when we've spoken to Narragansett Improvement, who's going to do the paving job, they're going to take it from there, and they're going to sink it and go into the drain that's across the parking lot. So they're going to extend that.
And that was a recommendation from Bob Anderson at the town?
Yeah,
Excellent. Good. And then the second part, what was the second?
There was some.
Oh, the lines?
There was some paint. There was some
Concern.
paint. Yeah, Bob said he'd get up there. He's, as a traffic engineer,
Excellent.
I said if you could get up there and just give us some ideas of where you might, put stop signage in that would, whether it be painted on the tar on the pavement itself or signs themselves.
Madam Chair, the concern was in the back near the trans in the high school, those fields coming in and out with these cars parked, and if a couple of cars are absent, you don't know where to turn to leave, and it can get a little risky, people coming in. So, and again, you reached out to Mr. Anderson.
I called him yesterday. He called me back today.
Excellent. Beautiful. I like to see this collaboration between the town and the school. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say thank you for looking into the community issue and the parking lot issue. I think working with the town's a good idea. Thank you.
Mr. Fiorello?
Alex, you had mentioned the roof work at McCourt. We had to change the contractor.
We changed contractors. The original contractor that was doing the EFIS system, they had trouble getting his insurance from him, and some other issues. He didn't want to go to the bracket system. And
Why is that?
I don't know why he didn't, but he didn't want to. He wanted I guess a lot of extra money to go, and so they went to a second low bidder, and who has come in and taken over the job.
Okay, did you say something about guaranteeing the work?
Well, the tar that's on the building, the company Parex, I believe it is, that makes the panels, they wouldn't warranty them staying adhered to the building because of the tar, which resulted in the architect engineer sitting down and figuring out what they could do, and they've come up with a bracketed system.
So the bracket system will ensure that it's actually covered under the warranty.
Right, and
All right.
and they've I was there yesterday, and they had just started it, and I got pictures today from Will, who went by there later in the day, and it looks like they've completed the whole bracketed system. So
Great, thank you.
Mr. Salvatore?
Madam Chair, I know Mr. Demotic is not here tonight, but I would like to recognize him because he's the original person that brought up the concern in regards to the drainage at Community. So I'm glad to hear that's rectified, or getting rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Anything else, Mr. Mitchell? We're good?
I think that's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the chairperson's report, school-town collaboration. As we heard, the town is working to help resolve some of the minor issues that we are having with repairs, so we appreciate that, and I want to thank the mayor for his attendance this evening. Next item on the agenda is reports of standing committees, payment of bills. Who is standing in for Mr. Demotica?
I drew the short straw, so it's me.
Nice.
Payment of bills. So the fiscal subcommittee met on Tuesday, and we approved the payment of bills in the amount of $1,385,596.73.
And you move passage of the payment of bills?
I do move passage.
Thank you, Mr. Denon. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? And that motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is... Who's missing?
Paul's out.
Oh, Mr. Demotica. My apologies. Next item on the agenda is Fiscal Management Subcommittee update.
Yet again, I drew the short straw, so it's me giving the update. You'll have to bear with me. We had a very full agenda on Tuesday. Just to give you a summary, most of it we're going to talk about later tonight, so I won't go into everything. But we talked about some of the paving work that Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Brignano discussed, some concrete work also at community, so both of those projects are at community. We talked about energy efficient lights for the parking lot in the back here. Let's see. We talked about the CHS practice field, which again will be later on the agenda. There's a new contract for the pool, which is again on the agenda tonight. And I think that's it. Oh, and probably the biggest thing is the progress payment for the health and safety project that's coming up too. We made a partial, we approved a partial payment for the health and safety work. Do you want me to go through these dollar amounts or just wait till?
Why don't we wait till we get to
that's
the
what I figured.
specific item? Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Policy and Procedure Subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorello.
Yes, we met actually twice this week. We had a large agenda as well. We talked about everything from affirmative action to personnel and student dress codes, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips were back before us, as well as student suspension. We'll discuss those later, though, when we're about to vote on them. The one thing I do want to mention is the handbooks for all the levels of the school. As you know, there's one for the elementaries, two for the two middle schools, and then one for the high school. What we found is, in some cases, the handbook does not strictly follow what the policy that we have passed is. Some of the administrators of the past have expanded on them, so we're trying to bring the handbooks in line with the current policy as laid out by the school committee. Also, we want to ensure that there is more equity in a lot of the policies within the handbooks. So that's going to be an ongoing process for the rest of the summer, probably, which I'm sure we're going to bring in. We're actually going to bring in on the student dress codes, because there are so many different issues that we're going to try to address with that. We are going to put together a student council, members of the high school. They'll come in and sit down with probably Mrs. Fogel and whoever else Mr. Mitchell feels appropriate to give their feedback as well. So we're just trying to bring a little more common sense to the dress codes, both student and personnel, and make sure that the way that they're being enforced is equitable throughout the district as well. So,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. And Mrs. Teal, no Achievement and Communication Subcommittee update. Is that correct? Correct. Thank you. Budget Task Force update, we'll remove that from the agenda moving forward, but we have, as my understanding, extended an invitation for the Budget Task Force. I know they had additional information that they wanted to share with us, so perhaps once the summer's over, they can offer some of their comments in the fall. Next item is comments from the public. Anyone here wish to speak this evening? No. Hearing none. Public hearing, reading of policies. I'm going to turn this over to you, Mr. Fiorello, since there's a number here that you are more aware of than I am.
I would ask that the policy be read. The policies to be read into the record would be G1, the affirmative action policy, action plan rather, the I-10, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips, and J7, student suspension. The two dress code policies were tabled until a future meeting.
And do you know if the amended policies, specifically the overnight field trip and student suspension, are those on the district's website?
Mr. Denon, you were asking this question. What was the answer? No, right?
I think they're not.
Can we get them on the website? The modified version so that people can see what they
Yeah,
are?
to be very honest, I mean, very slight changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know what the changes are?
Yes, and I thought I would bring those up when we go to vote.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So let's move to table the personnel dress code and student dress code, Mr. Fiorello.
I'm sorry, yes, I would make a motion to table G3, the personnel dress code, and J20, the student dress code.
Okay. And we'll second that by Mr. Denon. All in favor? Those opposed? And that carries 6-0. And is there anyone here this evening that wishes to speak for or against any of the policies that we have listed tonight? Hearing none. Nice summer meeting. We will call the public hearing closed at this time at 8:25 and move along to old business. Discussion and/or vote to approve resolution SER 2016-09, amended fiscal 17 school budget. Mr. Mitchell.
Madam Chair, we have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort as a central office leadership team balancing this budget. I've asked Alex to provide a report on where we are exactly with the budget, and I think it's important to know that, our goal is always to continue to move. The guiding question is, how do we continue to move the district forward with the resources that we have available to us? And, in some cases, it was utilizing the new funds that we have available to us, and in other cases it was reallocating existing resources to accommodate the things that we wanted to do moving forward. So with that, and I'm sure there'll be some questions as we proceed with our conversation, but let me turn it over to Alex, and he will walk you through this document that he has provided for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. The packets I handed out tonight, there are a couple of different things in them. I think the top copy was a copy of the resolution that the budget recommendations we're making in a resolution format for you to adopt. I also just had it in an Excel spreadsheet, just a little easier to work off. I put a sheet in here, just changes in positions since the last budget that we sent to the town. Some adjustments in positions we've made since then. One of the things we always have a concern of trying to not use too much of our one-timers and stuff. So I've got a sheet in here what type of one-time revenues we're using in this budget, and a sheet that we pass each year that pretty much lists everyone's position and salaries. So that we have kind of a salary ordinance to go by during the year, and then the budget document itself, so that those who didn't want to print it on their home printer or whatever wouldn't have to use up all their ink. So what I'll start with is this sheet here, just to walk through the changes that we have before you tonight. The budget that we had submitted to the town was $64,116,377, and as you know, that included almost $2 million of, just a little bit over $2 million in revenue requests. It was a 4% ask of about $1.6 million, and another $400,000 in the town to fund a capital line item for us that existed back in the mid 2000s, and as a state and had financial problems in the 2006, 7, and 8, and passed them pretty much on to cities and towns. That line item disappeared and has never really come back, so we were trying to get that reestablished. The town, as you know, gave us about $1,022,000, and they're going to handle the capital items. They also gave us $187,000 for capital, but they're not giving us that money. They're holding that similar to what they did with McCourt last year, and as we have projects that we complete, we would send the invoices to the town, and the town will pay for projects up to $187,000. So, and the first line item reflects a $1,013,000 reduction in town appropriation. The second line item, as you know, after the town acted on the budget, the General Assembly acted, and we did receive an additional, from what was budgeted, $292,000 plus dollars in state aid. So we're reflecting that in the budget. The year that we just ended, we had budgeted some Article 31 money. I think we'll be able to get through the year without drawing that down, and so we can use that in next year's budget, and that's the $285,000 you see marked Article 31. It's for literacy and technology. money that used to be restricted, and years ago, when the state did have budget problems and couldn't give as much aid as they wanted to, they lifted the restrictions on those monies, and so it became free and clear to use any way you want. And we've had some of that money sitting on our balance sheet for a while to use in a difficult year, and we're recommending we take it. We've increased the amount of fund balance by $246,976, which will bring our fund balance request to about $1,197,000. We were over $1.4 million last year, so a little bit lower than what we requested to use last year. And then the last line item on there is, as you know, with the state action on summer schools, we had budgeted $35,000 from revenues that we once received from summer school, running summer school, and since we can't charge for that anymore, I've taken that $35,000 off. So it ends up in a net budget of $63,893,335, or if you look at your resolution, it's a net reduction from the budget we originally, the school committee originally adopted of $223,042, and that's because we used other revenues to fill in those reductions in town appropriation. On the appropriation side, we started obviously with the same $64,116,377, and then these next line items reflect not only changes in positions and a couple of people, I think we had 2 people retire after the budget was adopted by the school committee, so those step 10 employees we would hope to fill at something less, but it also reflects all the movement that when the school department, Tina and Bob, do their matrix and people are, wanting to apply for new positions or move to other schools or whatever it may be. So this is the net result of that throughout all the schools. You see a reduction of $65,000 in Ashton. And that's also that also reflects a reduction of a 0.5 reading interventionist. Community, it's an increase of $7,820. Cumberland Hill salaries up $275,000, and there's actually 4 new positions there: a special educator, a kindergarten position, and 2 TAs. I guess we had 2 TAs, part-time TAs last year at the preschool for children with one-on-one needs, and now those students will be full-time students, and so we need full-time TAs with them on a regular basis. So there's 4 positions in there, as well as any other movement that occurred with, job changes. Garvin, a minus of $20,539. BF Norton salaries is $139,656, and that's basically the curriculum coordinators. We're not sure where they'll come from right now, so we've moved money back until that all shakes itself out and who we go into those jobs. So we've put the money back in BF Norton, and you see the reduction in the itinerants of $164,000. That's basically that money. School, $39,905. That's a reduction of those 2 part-time TAs as well as a part-time teaching position, because those students moved up. McCord salaries, $24,654 increase. North Cumberland, $7,216 increase. The high school, a minus $32,320. The grants writer position is not included in this budget at this time, attendance budget. Facility salaries up $5,300. That's we had a carpenter retired. We had 2 maintenance men. Well, this reflects one of those maintenance men moving up to carpenter, and we didn't want to take the salary of the carpenter's position away. We wanted to reallocate that into a new position, an HVAC person, which we don't have, and we have so much work to do in that area. So you basically, and the HVAC position will pay more than the maintenance person that we had before, so that's that reflection. The facilities contract, facilities capital was $187. We've taken it down to $150. The Sodexo contract, $50,750 reduction. The goal to keep the contract cost the same as it is this year. Utilities, we had a good year in utilities last year. We probably ran about $200,000 ahead because of the type of winter we had. This is basically, it doesn't mean next winter would be anything like that, but to balance the budget, we've trimmed a little bit out of utilities. It's kind of an unknown, but we had money in for a special ed consultant, and what we've done instead in some discussions after, since the school committee adopted the budget, we're looking at hiring a .5 psychologist to handle that role, and if we do that, the special ed director felt we could probably remove the consultant money from her budget, so that's that $100,000 reduction. We put a $274,000 of breakage in the budget, and as you know, each year we put a budget together, and we budget everyone that they're going to get paid for every day that they should, 52 weeks a year. It doesn't happen because people go out sick or they retire or whatever, people run out of sick time. We usually don't budget this. We usually let this be part of offsetting other costs that might come up in the budget or that type of stuff, but we're going to budget $274,000 this year, or at least in this budget submission. We went out to bid for the strategic plan consultant. That wasn't in the original budget. That bid came in back at $11,400, so we're recommending that be put in the superintendent's budget. All these, believe it or not, all these payroll ins and outs resulted in fringe benefit adjustments of only $25,000, $870. So it's reflected. We put $10,000 in from hockey, but we took it from athletic supplies because we tried to purchase those supplies up front this year so that we wouldn't have to make the purchases next year, and so hockey's in this budget. And then even though the General Assembly did give us the $292 in additional state aid, they also didn't go with the governor's recommendation on what we had to pay for tuitions for charter school students. We had budgeted, I think it was $7105 we had budgeted, and the RIDE estimate now, and it's only a projection because they're still working off FY15 UCOA information. They're a little bit behind, but they've given us and they put it in letters this big, projected estimate at this point of $7,554. So that additional over $400 per that increase of $200,000+. And so you come to the same $63,893,000. The changes in positions is the next sheet. You can just see some of the positions that we've put in the budget.
Can we just ask a question here first?
Couple quick questions.
Oh, sure. Stay on that page.
Thank you, Mr. Brignano. A couple quick questions. The pool income, is that going to show up on another list?
The pool income was already in there. We had budgeted an increase in rental fees, knowing that the pool was up and knowing that we're either going to go out to bid or get an increase in revenues.
After-school program?
And after-school program, there's a significant increase in the after-school program because they've grown the program, plus an increase in the fee, and that was already included because I'd been working on those for a while.
And how about our health care fund balance? Is that going to come in here?
You're talking about the money that we have reserved for healthcare claims?
Correct, yes.
I haven't used any of that.
You haven't used any of that?
Nope, that sits in our part of our surplus right now. It's $450,000. We put it aside several years ago in case we ever really had a horrific budget year, even if it wasn't overspent in healthcare. Let's say we just had a deficit.
I'm just trying to understand.
And we weren't overspent in healthcare coverage. I would still take that in and reduce my healthcare to balance the budget. So it gives us some flexibility. It's at $450.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to run through any of the other sheets? Or?
I think what you were going to do is the changes in positions?
Yeah, the changes in positions, you can read them. Since the budget was last adopted, we've put these additional positions in, a special educator and 3 full-time TAs and the .5 psychologist, which I kind of mentioned as I went through. And all the action at the elementary school, I believe, resulted in a net 1 additional position. And I chose the kindergarten person at Cumberland Hill to be that 1 net addition. And then this budget, we did delete 2.5 reading interventionists, 1 at Ashton, 1 at Garvin, and the grant writer.
Before you go on, so in total, how many interventionists have we cut out of the budget due to lack of funds?
Excuse me, I couldn't quite hear you.
How many interventionists in total have been reduced from last year's budget to this year's budget?
This is one.
Well, this is one, obviously.
Right, and then I believe we reduced 2 at the high school in the original budget. And the rest of the schools were untouched. And how many do we have remaining at the high school? I've got it here. I got the personnel supplement.
Is it based on academic need or fiscal issues?
Well, when we look, well, I don't know if you want to jump in, but when we looked at the numbers earlier in the budget process, it seemed that that
Mr. Mitchell?
Madam Chair, let me. It was easier to make the decision at the high school. It was data driven. We felt that we were overstaffed at the high school with interventionists. That's why we decided to do what we did there. And at the elementary level, we again, looking at the data, looking at red, yellow, and green level students, we made the decision to reduce by 0.5 in those two schools so that we could, as I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, so that we could, move forward and like, so for example, like our thinking is that the money that we saved with those 2.5 interventionists, we're using them to offset the cost of the additional curriculum people that we feel are necessary to move us forward. So that was the thinking behind those decisions.
I think the data at Ashton, when we first looked at the budget, I think there were 27 students in the red, and an interventionist, I think, should see 30 plus, 36 students. So that was kind of a data-driven one, and I'm not sure what the numbers were at Garvin right now, but the Ashton, I just kind of remember.
Mrs. Teal?
I guess I'm struggling a little bit with this part of the conversation because for a year we met with these teachers. Everybody presented to us. An interventionist was absolutely on the list of things to protect, that they felt that they were better able to serve students, and that, in fact, there are students that are sort of on the cusp, which they really could benefit from intervention, but because we don't have enough interventions, they're not getting services. So now I'm in a budget where not only are we not maintaining what we had, servicing those kids, and take a look at our results on any assessment scores, we have kids that are struggling in math, we have kids that are struggling in science, and we have kids that are struggling in ELA, and now we're taking away supports to serve those kids. This does not help us drive student success by removing these. And I would argue this is a budget-driven, not what's in the best interest of students. And for one, I can't support those cuts because I spent a year listening how important it was to support these students. And these are the students that are sort of at risk of falling into that in needing more serious intervention. And I'm not going to set these kids up for failure because we are not funding what they need. And I would say the same thing when I see, I'm glad to see a 0.5 psychologist added. Are we finally at the point where we have adequate mental health coverage? Because we certainly, prior to this, at this particular point in time, don't. We know we don't. We have an issue with that. That's a huge issue for how well kids do in school. It's a huge safety issue for every student within the school. And it's a huge issue for each individual's child's well-being if we can't meet their needs, and God forbid something horrible happens in this district, because again, we're making decisions not in the best interest of students. And I understand the budget has to be balanced, but we're potentially putting children at risk by not having some of these positions in this budget. That makes no sense to me.
Well, this budget just adds to what we passed, a few weeks ago. It adds another 0.5 position to the
So are we
full-time guard.
fully
So the rest
staffed
of
to where we need to be? No. No.
Dr. Santer is here.
No. It makes no sense.
But that is the way it is, and we took what we had and instructions to make sure that we increase that.
I have no doubt that you are doing an incredible amount of work to service kids with an incredibly limited number of resources. I'm simply saying I can't continue to support a budget when we are leaving children who are vulnerable, who we have in our care and protection and a responsibility to educate, K-12, and we're not doing that. And I'm not going to say that's okay anymore. I do not want to be part of a school district that has a terrible tragedy because we have 2 mental health experts trying to help 4,500 kids. That's just, it's unconscionable that we're doing stuff like this.
I would say that's accurate, yes, 2 social workers, but we also have school psychologists that are in the building, as well as,
But not full-time.
well, but no, we do it in the schools, each middle school has a full-time school psychologist.
And at each,
We now have a full-time, 1.5 as well as a social worker. The elementary schools have a half
Half.
school psychologist, as well as full-time guidance counselors.
and the elementary schools is where, when we met for the past year, was one of the areas that demonstrated the greatest need, in part because we're getting ELL students, or that are coming, students that are coming in and out of our district because of employment changes or whatever, and those kids seem to come with a fair number of emotional issues because they're kind of, they're coming in and out of a school district. They need the support to be successful. We're responsible for making them successful.
Madam Chair, excuse me. I'm sorry, Dr. Santa, could you come to the microphone, please? Thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair.
No problem.
Sorry.
That we're not budget driven. Yeah, I mean, we do use what we got. But for what you were talking about with the transient students coming in and out, we have identified the school with the highest level of transient, and we do have, on top of having the half-time school psychologist, a full-time guidance counselor, we also have a behavior coach that works within that school. And that particular school also has consulting neuropsychologists and clinical supports within it. That's not just for kids in special needs. They're there for all the students within that building. So across the district, that school has those supports, but also across the district, that neuropsychologist does 15 hours in this district, as well as we have 30 hours of clinical supports that are provided throughout the school. So I feel like, I worked in other districts where there's been maybe more social workers, but you didn't have the clinical consultation. So there's some ways we have many more services in a lot of other districts, and in some ways we don't. And it's not really an apples-to-apples comparison. If you asked, if I was told, give me a wish list of how you develop schools in order to support social emotional, it wouldn't look like this, but there is the reality.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. Dr. Santa, would you say that we have more mental health support in this coming year than we've had in previous years?
Yeah, it's considerably more. And what I've done is taken a look at where, I guess we want to call them hot spots. I think of it as triage. Where are the greatest need? And then we have adjusted to meet the greatest need. We started the adjustment last year, and I made a bigger adjustment this year. Last year, we added the in-school suspension classroom, because although that may seem as disciplinary, we all know that students with disciplinary issues typically have social and emotional issues. I would say that program has been very successful. We had the right person in the right job, creating the right relationships with kids. And then the second component was to add the flex classroom, which again supports any student that has social and emotional issues, as well as kids returning back from hospital and hospitalizations and things along those lines. So that classroom is there to support that population of kids that was abundantly clear we were missing the mark by a lot. And although it's staffed by a special educator, that's just because but any student can be there, because a special educator can serve as a regular educator, but not vice versa. So we put that in place. We have several students stepping down from the more significant alternative learning programs into that flex classroom because they don't need that high level of support anymore, which I also think is quite successful. But there was that kind of, it's just a crew of kids that we needed to have that support. So I do think that we have way more supports, and it's really not just a 0.5 that's being added. You've also added additional guidance counselors. We've also added the additional teacher within that particular program. So it has increased. Okay.
So what would be a caseload at the high school if you have that classroom for?
The flex classroom? Mm-hmm. What's a caseload? They're actually not going to have a caseload. It has to be flexible in nature, which is why it's called the flex classroom. So there, on any given, obviously we're not going to, I don't think you're going to see a classroom of 15 kids in it. I think, and it's not a classroom where you're sitting there all day long. It has to be flexible in nature. So we have some students who would be scheduled to come down for maybe a 20-minute or a half an hour or a class period, depending on the student. That's very individualized. But then there are other students that need to be able to go there ad hoc. And some of our students, it's not even a day-to-day thing. Some of our students, it's triggered by certain events, some traumatic events that have occurred at certain times of year, like Christmas time and things like that. So we know those are times where that a particular student may utilize that program more. So it's flexible in nature. They don't have a specific caseload, not even in special ed or regular ed. I'm not saying they couldn't ever have someone on a caseload, but it's not really designed to be that way, because if we do that, then they're constrained. We can easily overwhelm that teacher. So it needs to be more flexible in nature. And then having we're placing it right next to or near where the in-school suspension classroom is, so there's additional supports of that particular teacher who's particularly good with developing relationships. So I say we really have increased services. And it's not ideal, but we don't really live in an ideal world at this particular time. So did I answer your question?
Yes.
Is that what you meant? Yeah. Okay. And then we kept the additional behavioral support person at BF Norton. We have an additional behavioral support person at McCourt Middle School. And then we have the clinical supports, too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Fiorello.
While we're discussing special ed at BF,
Yes.
do we have all the support that we need for the incoming population?
It's funny that you should say. We've added. I tend to look at. I look at all the students. How we develop programming is we sit down and look at all the students that are coming, what grade they're going up to, and we start developing supports around them. So there are no programs in the district where we've said this is a disability, this particular disability label, and all the kids have to be that particular disability label to be shoved into that program. We design the programs around the kids. So let's start with that. So then we look at where the supports are going. So our support classroom, our behavioral support classroom at BF Norton, the success classroom, the older classroom, because of the shift of kids, need an additional teacher assistant. That we've put in, it's in the budget, and it's posted to be hired for, because no one took it in job fair. I have not had a chance, and I apologize, but since I'm asked, I can't not tell the truth, but I didn't have a chance to talk to the superintendent, but I'm a little bit alarmed because as of late this afternoon, I received a call about another new student moving in that would need to be in that success classroom, that K-3 classroom, and that classroom right now is at 9 very significantly impaired and very, very needy students. So even with the teacher and 3 teacher assistants scheduled to be in that classroom next year, I'm a little bit concerned if the student actually arrives of what happens with the dynamics of that classroom. So I didn't have a chance to give you guys a heads up, but I'm a little bit concerned. I'm waiting to see if that student actually comes, and then we'll have to make decisions based on that. There are cohorts of need here that, and this happens in every district and everywhere you go. So there's a bump of kids coming up from preschool to kindergarten this year. We're expecting an even bigger one next year of significant needs. So when you can't really look at just individual special ed numbers and say, oh, okay, well you have 739 students in special ed, and this year we have 731. It's less. It should be better. It's not that. It's the quality of need. So I would say we may have less students in special ed, but much higher need of what we're seeing, especially the pre-K coming up to K. This year, next year, I have a bump of kids coming up from 5th grade to 6th grade that really need significant services, and we had an overall district-wide bump of students who are developmentally delayed, also with autism spectrum disorders and things along those lines, that we needed to add another teacher at Cumberland Hill, as you heard Mr. Pregnano talk about. In order to not inundate that classroom, we were already full, beyond full, before school even starting. So in order to relieve the stress across the entire district, by adding one teacher, immediately kind of relieve the pressure across district in order to provide support for that particular student, and also more appropriately place them, because we're going to kind of make do. If it's just a 1 or 2 kids, we can make do and keep them kind of where they're at. But with the addition, we're able to provide better services, more comprehensive services, and more inclusive services, which would be our goal. So that's kind of what's happened. I think I answered your question, but
I'm sorry to
I'm
keep asking.
concerned about.
Also, how's the construction at all the different special ed classrooms progressing?
My understanding is that the quiet room door has been completed and looks really nice. I haven't gone to see it. That's been done. One of the quiet rooms, we know we're going to have to wait to the September, which was probably a good thing because the principal wants to possibly move that classroom. I'm going there tomorrow to look at that. So as far as that, those things seem to be fine.
And what about the Strive program at North Cumberland?
Yes.
Is that getting all reworked?
Yeah, it doesn't need to have what we did for there. Right now, we have 2 teachers. I've recommended an additional teacher within that because we have over, I think it's something like, don't quote me, but I believe it's like 26, almost 27 kids across 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And the quality of the students moving from 5th grade to 6th grade and the need is higher than the current kids that are there. The actual format of the classroom is perfectly fine. We have enough space. That's not an issue. We simply moved OT into the social worker's old office, and they can use that space, and then we have plenty of classroom space. And they've already designed a schedule so that the students are getting the experience of multiple teachers and all those different nice things that we want to provide for kids. So, all right.
Anyone else? Nope. Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
Santa. That was very articulate and nice to hear the improvements that you're making in the program. I know it's very difficult given the budget constraints, but it really sounds like the programs are being refined toward what students are
it's
needing.
always a process, and any director will tell you that. It's over time. They have to keep continually kind of maneuver and change and move around, and then duck and cover when you have to ask for something new. Right.
Thank you. Yes, we know that very well. Mr. Prignano, I think you have one more sheet here, the one-timers in the budget. Do you want to go over that one, that one-timer page?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the use of fund balance would be $1,197,608 now in this proposal. The Article 31, technology and literacy, we had planned on, we had included in last year's budget, but we'll be able to not use them next year, so I'm recommending we roll them and use them into this year. That's $285,000.
So I'm still having a difficult time hearing you, but just to clarify, so we didn't use it last year, we're rolling it into this year, and once we use it, it's done.
It's gone, right.
Done. Okay, thank you.
And then the breakage, we have used, the 8-9 years I've been here, we have used breakage at different times. But what basically that, we usually haven't used that amount, and it's basically taking $274,000 just out of the salary account and hoping that we have enough, and I guess we shouldn't really hope for that people go unpaid or that we have absences, but that's what it would result. We would need, those type of things would go towards generating that type of breakage. And there's always some, either some breakage in the budget or you could overspend salaries. We shouldn't overspend salaries. We know, we can control who we put on payroll, so usually breakage tends to be a positive number. We're not faced with things like, public safety overtime and those type of things that can, result in being more difficult to control. So the total of that would be $1,757,000.
Any other questions with regard to any of the budget items here?
I have a question.
Is that you, Mrs. Teal?
Yes, sorry. I have a question about the grant writer. Has there ever been any thought of hiring a grant writer, but they get paid on a percentage of the grant that they bring in, so that we can...
We're doing that right now with, what's his name? Martin Associates. We
Successful?
Well, I'm not sure. We just started it. We experimented here in the end of this year, last year's budget, the last 4 months of the year, paying him I guess he's hired a grant writer, and a number of districts that he works with are contributing to pay for that grant writer. And so I know he's written one grant that if you want to go into, you can. But we can still explore it that way, maybe than putting someone full-time on our payroll. Because many of the districts are looking for the same type of,
Right.
assistance.
And did you
So I
have-
thought we could maybe call him in and work on that, so we still get the service.
And did you have any sort of anticipation of what you thought that grant writer for $35,000 would bring in? Like, did you have a
No, I didn't.
general feel, if by working with other districts, of what they were able to accomplish with the grant writer?
Well, what we do know is that grant writing requires a specific skill set, and there are people who are really good at that, and it requires a significant amount of time and effort, as you know, to write a grant, and most grants are competitive. So, I think it's, I think to hire someone that is has demonstrated skill in that area, would be the sensible thing to do. And we actually had some ideas about, who that could possibly be based on our personal experiences. I mean, I don't know that $35,000 is a lot of money, but one thing that I would like to say regarding your comment about, like I guess some grant writers work on a contingency, but I don't know that the research shows that
Is this effective?
works really well. So one of the things that I just had a Northern Collaborative meeting on Tuesday with all of the superintendents from the Northern Collaborative school districts, Smithfield, North Smithfield, Pawtucket, Lincoln, Johnston. There are others. And one of the things that we talked about was, I actually had a conversation with the superintendent, Melinda Smith from North Providence, the possibility of maybe sharing a grant writer. So I think those are the kinds of opportunities that we should be investigating because, budgets are tight. And we know that there is grant money out there, and we should be in a position to take advantage of those. So I think we need to explore that a little bit more. But, we've all had to deal with tight budgets. And all I can say is that, as I mentioned earlier, we put a tremendous amount of time and effort into, thinking about what we need to do to move this district forward. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions in order to balance the budget. So we gave this a lot of thought and spent a tremendous amount of time on this. And I think we've all been in situations where we don't have the money to do everything that we want to do. But I believe that, given the thought that went into this and the leadership that we have, I know that we can continue to move the district forward with the recommendations that we put before you.
Thank you.
Anyone? So, we have a budget reconciliation of $63,893,335. The resolution is authorizing and empowering the Cumberland School Committee to amend the 2016-17 budget from $64,116,377 to $63,898,335, a reduction of $223,042. Mr. Prignano has gone through each of the revenue and adjustments and appropriations changes. I don't know if anyone has any further questions, or would you like to take an action on the budget this evening? It's my understanding it was discussed in fiscal, Mr. Denon.
I have I have a question for Alex. For
Not
the .5 reading interventionist at Ashton and Garvin and the grant writer, does that total to what, 188,042?
Mrs. Teal?
That seems like it's the difference between what you asked for before and what you're reconciling to.
Mrs. Teal, could you repeat your question into the
Sorry.
microphone so this
The,
end of the building can hear you?
the .5 reading interventionist at Ashton and Garvin and the grant writer, if I'm looking at what the budget was reduced, 188,042, what is being eliminated with that 188,042 besides these two people? Or what would it cost to reinstate them?
I'm not sure what you mean by 188.
If I'm looking at where we were to where we are with this budget, actually, is it 223,422?
It's 223,042.
Yep, sorry, yep. What would it cost to put the two interventionists back in?
The two interventionists?
Be a one full-time interventionist. Yep.
Yes, 70. Depending on, I don't recall what their healthcare
$80,000.
situations, that type of stuff. Yes, somewhere in that $70,000 to $80,000 for the two reading positions, or the two half reading positions.
Okay.
How will we know if we make these reductions to the budget and they include staffing changes, if it was the right decision or the wrong decision? So we've talked about mental health, we've talked about dropping interventionists. How are we going to measure it? Whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? I know Dr. Santa spoke a little bit about risk, but with regard to student performance and student achievement, how will we know if the decision we make is going to hurt the district or help the district?
Well, I think the only way that we could possibly know is by looking at the data, and I think it has to be not just one data point like STAR, for example, but it could be, STAR would be one of the data points that we look at. But I think the only way that we could ultimately make a decision as to what the impact will be is looking at the data at the end of the school year. So I don't know how else we could possibly.
You'd almost have to have them here a year and not here and see what the difference was. I'm not sure you would know.
So we aren't making a data-driven decision.
Well,
we said we were earlier.
We looked at the numbers when we made the decision to begin with. Like the number, like I said, the number of students who were, in the red tier, and the number of students who were in the yellow tier. So.
If I may, here's a fair question that I posed to myself when I looked at the data after coming on board, is given the number of interventionists that we have, and I've worked in a few different districts, and we do have, I think we have a reliance on interventionists unlike other districts in terms of how we support our schools. We do have a good support system in place. I look at it as an independent variable, meaning that it should, when I was in Situate, interventionists fluctuated based on, specifically, it would be a 1.2 to 1 point, it would fluctuate truly on those data points, right? So a fair question that I asked myself was, when we look at this holistic data, are we exiting over time an appropriate number of students given the amount of interventionists that we have? Because it is, I'll use a strong word, a luxury. I came from schools where we did not have that luxury of having interventionists. The majority of intervening in students' education fell on teachers differentiating, right? So, to me, it's an independent variable that should move with student data. So it should increase and decrease depending on that need. However, given that we are doing an appropriate job of developing teachers to understand how to differentiate better in their classrooms, that would have, I don't want to say less of a reliance on interventionists because they are specialists in content areas, but you do kind of want to have less of a reliance on that type of model, right? And you want those interventionists really working with those tertiary kids, those kids that are truly, really struggling. Because those tier 2 kids, take ourselves. We've had conversations about it. For me, algebra was a strong suit, but geometry I struggled in. That conceptual geometry, right? Didn't necessarily mean I needed an interventionist helping me. I just needed some potentially work in certain concepts that could help me move along. So we have to think about that along those same lines. In a perfect world, would we want interventionists in every room? I just question, are we utilizing that resource to the best of our ability? And that's why I want to look at our systems and not abandon interventionists, but really look at the quality of the instruction that we're providing within this model that we've proposed for kids. That's my best input. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it, and we're prepared to do that for September.
Yep.
So what we'll see is the kids that were receiving the help won't have that until we build that system of support in there for them. Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Mr. Denon.
I have a question for Mr. Prignano about the fund balance. So we're using $1.2 million in fund balance. That's what the proposal. How much is left after this? Do you have a sense of that?
Probably around $3 million.
And that would be $3 million undesignated?
That would include the health.
Okay, so that's everything.
Designated and undesignated.
Do you have any sense of how much the undesignated is? I know it's a hard question.
Maybe 1.6.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so we have discussion and or vote to approve Resolution SCR 2016-09, amended fiscal 17 school budget. Pleasure of the committee.
Can I,
Mrs.
Madam
Teal?
Chair.
Oh, Mrs. Teal, do you have
Sorry.
another?
I'm wondering, can I make an amendment to the budget at this time?
You can.
Okay. So then I would propose amending the budget, and I can appreciate that you're trying to build the systems, and I, my experience, I've appreciated that. We've been trying to do that for gifted and learning also.
Mrs. Teal,
Sorry.
can you talk into the microphone?
But I would prefer to add, I don't think you're quite ready for the grant writer because I'm not sure $35,000 is going to, I think there needs to be a little more thought with that and planning and maybe sharing.
Mrs. Teal, can you move your microphone to that side so when you turn your head we can hear you? Thank you.
But I would like to add the .5 reading interventionists at Ashton and Garvin. I propose that they be added back into the budget so that we are meeting the needs of these students right now until you are able to make the adjustments to the curriculum and to professional development so that we can differentiate the way that we need to differentiate and these kids can be served. I'm just going to go back to what I heard during achievement, and that was that they were working and that there were very many kids that were, and you can see it in our test results, that are not where we need them to be. And I'm not willing to take resources away from them. I prefer not to take resources away from them at this point. So I would like to propose that the 2.5 reading interventionists at Ashton and Garvin be added back into the budget.
Mr. Prignano, you said about $80,000 roughly?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Mr.
I don't know the
Fiorello?
exact number, but
I'm curious, the adding 2.5 interventionists, would these be new hires or would these just be additional hours for current personnel?
well, there were 2 people in those jobs this year.
We would be rescinding 2 non-tenured teachers who are
So
currently
we'd
Can't
be
on.
hear
bringing
you
back
either.
2 more people.
We have 2 teachers who
we
are
shut that
on
off?
non-renewal,
No?
so we would be rescinding
Fan for
non-renewals then. I've held off because I didn't know what you were going to do with the budget, so
Okay, so to bring back the 2.5s would cost about $70,000?
$70,000 to $80,000.
$70,000 to
I don't
$80,000.
recall their
one
Does that
of
sound about right to you?
health care.
one of them The .5 at Ashton is a step 10, so 77, well, whatever. I mean, we're in negotiations, so currently 77,201, half of that. And then the .5 at Ashton is a step 7, so half of that, which is 63, 57,
29.
so 29.
Or maybe more than 80. I didn't realize one was a step 10.
Yeah, one is a step.
Yeah, they're usually
On top of it.
at the top tier.
Yes. So
Why they're specialists.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to just get it, but I just
That's-
wanted.
That's okay. So the cost of one step 10 teacher? I'm sorry, I missed it.
One is a step. The Ashton is a step 10, so half of that because it's .5. So half of a step 10 and half of a step 7.
So it'd be about 69 in salary and then fringe on top of that. So maybe more like 90 to 100 than 70.
Okay, so we
to
can
80.
call it 100. So Mrs. Teal moves to amend the...
Sorry, I have another question.
Yes, Mr. Fiorello.
Mr. Demano or Mr. Mitchell, if we were to add these 2.5s, would it have a positive impact? Or would it be just more of a good thing?
You want me to take the question? I don't think that it can have a negative impact. Again, do you ever want to cut resources that could help children? No, I think it boils down to what the superintendent mentioned at the beginning. You have hard decisions to make, and you're looking at things, and you're questioning how sort of, when a very small percentage, what I consider a small percentage of students are exiting exiting intervention, and there's a problem with something's going on, because we're well staffed in those areas in certain schools. And I'll speak about BF because that's my most recent experience. BF Norton has always been very well staffed with interventionists, okay, but we didn't do a very good job, or a good enough job in my opinion, of exiting students from intervention, and there are reasons for that, and we were digging in to find out what those reasons were. So the system that we had in place with the interventionists, with 6 students in front of them every period, seeing 36 students, we were treading water, but we weren't getting anywhere. So, is it possible that those students would benefit? We hear about the push-in model or inclusion all the time. There are different philosophies out there that those students should be in the classroom receiving the core content and not being pulled to work on skills. So there are philosophical things that educators labor over those things. So to answer your question directly, we would never, no, I don't think we ever would want to willingly give up interventionists, if we absolutely had to,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Fiorello.
I just want to state that we are technically not passing a balanced budget tonight, because we are dipping into our surplus of 1.2 at this moment. But if we're not taking care of teaching and learning, and for another, we'll say $100,000, while we're already spending 1.2, as much as I hate spending surplus, I hate even more losing some kids. So I will second Mrs. Teal's motion.
So what we have is an add of the 2.5s as an appropriation. And so as a revenue source for that, are you looking to increase the surplus or reduce one of the other line items in the budget?
The surplus.
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, it's a surplus this year, but next year it would go into our expenses. It's a one-time.
So that was the action we took last year, was we did add interventionists and we did use fund balance to pay for them, because the district had felt, I think we were 5-2 or 6-1.
If we had, did we get the results of what that's got us with the interventionists? Did any data come back from that?
Yeah,
We got better, more?
at our achievement subcommittee meetings.
I'd just like to say that I voted against that budget last year, specifically because I don't like spending surplus. We spent a little over 1.4 last year. We'll still be below that number. So at least, even if it's a small amount, we're moving in the right direction, and hopefully we'll find more additional revenue sources to close some of these gaps. And like Mr. Damana said, the ultimate goal is to reduce the number of interventionists over time with all the different programs that are being in place. So,
Right, I understand that, and I understand about spending a surplus, but usually when you add something to a budget, you find out a revenue source, you usually will take something else away. You don't usually take your money out of your bank. Perfectly, usually when somebody would recommend an addition, they would also add where they were going to take it from, an expense. I don't know if that's been really examined at this level. I mean, this is my first meeting. It seems like it's gone to the finance committee, and they did talk it over with no outcome about they're acting upon the recommendation of the school department. So I'm kind of at awe here with the assistant superintendent saying that, do we really need them? We like to get them all back into the classroom. I would like to see more classroom activity and not more, intervention or pulling kids out of the classroom. So I'm not really in favor of taking it out of the surplus.
So you could look for another revenue source. You could certainly reduce another line item within the budget so that you aren't going above the existing proposed budget by the administration. So that's an option as well. Mr.
I would make one suggestion, and it's not a good suggestion, quite honestly, but there are no good suggestions. We could zero out next summer's summer school program and decide during the course of the year a better way to fund it or not to have it. But I believe that we usually find some savings during the course of the year, so we would find that money later on anyways.
Mr. Denon?
Wouldn't that be in next year's budget, the following year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't help us for the current year.
Nope, I forgot my dates.
Mr. Salvatore?
Mr. Prignano, can we take $100,000 from the healthcare fund that currently has $450,000 in it?
Well, it's the same thing. It's using surplus. If you reduce the health care claims.
I mean, if it can be an allocated item out of that in justification, that would be okay. I just had questions.
Mr. Fiorello?
Alex, the restricted surplus money can be unrestricted
Absolutely.
by a majority vote of this body.
Right.
Okay. So it's really just more of a paperwork thing.
But it's still taking surplus. That you have to make up, that.
Mr. Prignano, what did we budget for health care increase this year?
6%.
And over the last, say, 2 or 3 years, we budgeted what amount?
The last couple of years, we've been increasing it by about 6% a year. This year, we overspent healthcare claims by about $650,000. So the amount that we have budgeted next year is really it just about what we spent this year. So there's almost no increase in healthcare. We're hoping that we had a bad year with claims and we won't see quite the same number of claims next year.
Understood. So I think what we need to keep in mind is if this does move forward, the town will be required, regardless, to approve it based on some information that our legal counsel has shared with us. So we'll be taking a budget that the administration has reconciled and adding, if we do in fact add fund balance, it'll be an additional amount of $100,000 that the town council would have to approve. Mr. Sylvia, did you have a comment?
I would. Thank you.
Can you speak into the microphone because we seem to be having a sound issue today? Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. I appreciate the difficult conversation you're having on this topic. I understand that. I just wanted to speak in favor of the budget submitted by Mr. Prignano and Mr. Mitchell. I understand these are necessary positions, but given that they're going to be funded by a one-time revenue source and their reoccurring expenses, I can appreciate what the administration is trying to do with their. I believe the fund balance this year is 1.4, 1.5, and I know the goal is to try to reduce that over time. So this, I believe, calls for 1.2 million. So that I know is going in the right direction. I realize the difficult calls, but I just wanted to speak in favor of that.
Do you have a suggestion as to how we can address the fund balance issue moving forward with the town?
On this matter, I did have a separate question, which I don't know if it would relate to funds or not, but all I have is the recommendation, the budget reconciliation page. So
we're building a $1.7 million structural shortfall into our budget.
Yes.
If this is approved, regardless of any amendments or changes.
Mm-hmm. On this sheet, I had town appropriations down by $1 million. Within the school committee's proposed budget, the three line items that make up the town appropriations total $42,517,000. What was appropriated by the town was just over $41,904,000, I believe, 904. That's a reduction of $613,000. I understand where Mr. Prignano got that from. Okay, I believe he added the $400,000 for the capital that was expected from the town. So the 613 added to them plus the 400,000, you get to the million. It's not a town appropriation reduction of $1 million, but I understand where it comes from. What I'm not following, and I don't see on this appropriations, is I would assume since the town budgeted $187,000 for capital, there'd be a reduction on the school budget of $187,000, which I don't see.
Mr. Prignano, can you speak to that?
Sure. There's $187,000 that the town will pick up this year for various things we do. We've also budgeted $150,000 in facilities and an offset of $150,000 from our designated for capital improvements from our surplus to do other things. $187,000 isn't enough in this district. So we've got $150,000 in our budget and the $187,000 that the town would also provide.
Does that answer your question?
There was a reduction in revenue of $400,000, but expenses should have gone down by $187,000. I don't, because the town will be funding that. I don't see that. I don't.
So, just so I'm clear and I understand what you're saying, you would anticipate for our capital items to see a reduction of $187,000?
I mean, with what the budget was adopted, the school committee proposed budget, you had a revenue source of $400,000, and they were capital in here of $400,000. The town is funding $187,000, so there should be. I would think there'd be a reduction. I get the $400,000 on the town on the revenue sources gone. The town will be funding that on its own, but I would expect a reduction in expenses also of $187,000, which I don't see.
There's 150. There's a reduction of $37,000. The 187 I took to 150, and I offset that 150 by taking 150 of our surplus to offset it. So if you take the 150 out of our budget, you take the 150 out of the revenue side too, the designated for capital. So I plan on 150,000 out of our capital account and 187 from the town. The number we need a number of closer to $400,000 in total than just the 187.
So it's not crystal clear to me here. Just so I'm clear, what I understand Mr. Sylvia is suggesting is that we should be reducing the capital line item by $187,000. So we're in agreement with that statement.
On the appropriations reductions, I would have expected to see it, yes.
Okay, so understood on that. And Mr. Prignano, it's not on this sheet.
No, I took 37 out and left
37.
150 in.
150
and I
in.
pay for that 150 by taking money from our surplus, from our designated portion for capital. Because remember, once we hit 4% of a fund balance, of an undesignated
Yep.
fund balance, anything above and beyond that automatically goes to capital improvements, which is good for the town, good for the school department.
Understood, but is that happening this year?
No, we do. We have about $600,000 in designated for capital that I'm proposing taking. We have 616 actually. I'm proposing taking 150 of that out. So if we
I
cut
understand.
the 187, we've cut 37. If we cut the additional 150, you really should take the 150 of revenue out too. So it wouldn't-
So
it
why
would-
isn't that completed here as part of the reconciliation?
I think it is. I think you see a facilities capital, a reduction of 37,000 on here,
Hold on, let me find it. Okay, yes.
and in the fund balance of 246,976, it includes both the capital and the designated and undesignated. I just put it on one line. If you go to the detail of the budget that you have, and Brian doesn't have this, I told him he could have mine after the meeting.
Understood.
You'll see the 150 in that capital line. The next to the last item, you see 150. You see it above the 1,047,000 on page 1, on the revenue page, the first page, page 1. So if you look at the bottom, you'll see 1,047,000 for undesignated, and you see the 150 designated from capital. So what I'm saying, if you took the 150 out of the expenditure side, you take that 150 off the revenue side too, and you don't affect any.
So it is listed in designated capital as a reduction.
All right.
Of one-
In your budget, it's detailed. On that spreadsheet, I just combined the two items for the 246.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so Mrs. Teal has made a motion to amend the resolution to include an additional, I think we said $100,000 of appropriation for the interventionists with an additional use of $100,000 of fund balance. Is that where the revenue is to come from? And that puts us at 63,993,335 at both the revenue and the expenditure. And Mr. Fiorello, did you second that and I missed that? Or okay, so Mr. Discussion, thank you. And is there any further discussion on this? No. Mr. Fiorello?
I believe that if we were to just earmark this for money coming out of the surplus, which, again, I hate spending our surplus on anything other than a one-time item, I believe that we could probably find the money for the two interventionists within the budget, given enough time. So I would say we could just earmark it for surplus and then hopefully not have to actually use the surplus.
But the
I
issue
understand.
is, we've built the budget by more than $100,000 in addition.
Mm-hmm.
It does now go to the town for their approval.
Yes.
So rather than reduce any of the budgetary line items, that's your choice. Okay. So we have a motion and a second on all the stuff we've just talked about. Any further discussion? Okay, so as the chair, as much as I completely understand your motivation and why we're doing this, I can't support it because I do think the town wouldn't support it. That's just my guess. I also think because we're using 2.7% of our budget, as my math worked out, is fund balance, we're creating a significant structural shortfall in the budget. So regardless of the motion here, I won't support it. I do appreciate the effort and the compassion and the enthusiasm around this, because I do think, your gut kind of can give you a good indication of what's going to happen, and we think there's probably going to be a little bit of a drop before there is a little bit of a leap. And Mr. D'Amata, I appreciate the fact that you want to revisit our programs and improve them. I think it's what we've wanted to hear for years, and I'm thrilled that that's going to occur here. But creating a structural shortfall in our budget of $1.7 million just puts us in a position to fail no matter how hard we try. So I won't be supporting it, and I won't support the budget moving forward. So we have a motion and a second on the amendment to the resolution here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. So that dies 3-3 with the chair voting no. And we have before us any more amendments to the budget? And again, my heart hurts, Mrs. Teal. Next item. I guess I can't just skip over that, can I? The whole thing. So what we have before us is a budget of $63,893,335. Pleasure of the committee on the budget.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wood.
make a proposal to accept the budget as presented, to send it to the town hall.
Mr. Wood moves passage of the budget at $63,893,335. Do I have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? No. So Mrs. Teal and that would be me, vote against the budget, but it does move forward to the town council for its approval because we did use fund balance in this situation. You will send it to the town to amend. Thank you. I appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is discussion and or vote to approve Resolution SC PR 6 2016-07A asphalt replacement at community school. Mr. Denon, you're on deck here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was discussed in fiscal on Tuesday. Like I said earlier, the project is to pave over the driveway where the buses drop off students, and also a small parking area that the teachers use in the front of the school. Originally, the project was a little smaller than that. It was just the driveway, but we talked about it at length in fiscal, and we added on that other part where it seemed to make sense to do it all at once. So I need to amend the resolution.
Okay.
So I can make a motion to. So sorry, the resolution was passed out of fiscal 3-0 on Tuesday, and I need to amend a couple items on the resolution.
Okay, so let's read the resolution first so that folks who are listening in. It's a resolution empowering the school committee to award Narragansett Improvement Company of Providence, Rhode Island, for paving the community school parking lot in an amount not to exceed $36,121.71.
That's correct, and this went out to bid, and they were the lowest bidder. And like I said, I make a motion to amend the total from $36,121.71 to $46,693.77. In addition, it said that the fiscal note talks about where the money's coming from. It says the 2015 to 2016 facilities budget, and in subcommittee we struck that and changed it to 2016 to 2017 facilities budget. So those are the two changes that we passed in subcommittee. I make a motion that we make those changes.
So Mr. Denon moves to amend the resolution with the changes, most specifically changing the amount not to exceed $46,693.77.
That's correct.
And the facilities budget from 16-17?
Yes, from 15-16 to 16-17.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you. And do I have a second on that? Second by Mr. Fiorello. Why did the amount increase? You may have said that, and I just...
Because we added to the original. When we got down to it, it seemed to make sense to do that parking area, the additional parking area.
I see, okay.
Did I cover that? Sorry.
I don't know, but you may have, and it just kind of flew over my head. Okay, so we have an amended resolution. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. And now we have to move to approve the amended
Yes.
resolution.
So I make a motion that we approve the amended resolution, SCPR 6 2016-07A, asphalt replacement at community school.
We have a motion by Mr. Denon to approve the resolution as amended. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Practice field?
Yes, the next, so we talked at fiscal about the practice field, which is behind CHS. The athletic director came to the subcommittee meeting. I'm trying not to talk with my hands because I know Mr. Salvatore doesn't like that.
I do
Why
like
not?
that, Mr. Dan. Italian.
Excuse me. The athletic director, Mr. Campanelli, came and gave an overview of the project, where it stands now. The idea is to renovate the fields at no cost to the district, aside from irrigation costs. They have some contractors who are donating their time and their effort to renovating that field. It does mean that the field will be closed for a year, basically an entire school year. The big issues are scheduling practices, and also Cumberland Colts use that field. So the athletic director is able to work out the practice schedule, and he spoke with the Cumberland Colts, and they're behind this. They support this. So we did not vote on this in fiscal, but we basically gave a go ahead. We didn't vote on it, but we liked what we heard. And one thing that we do want is a letter from any contractor who does work that will say that they're not charging us for this work. Before they go ahead and do any work, we need that letter. So I don't know if we vote tonight or not. I don't think there's anything to vote on. There's no resolution.
So at this point, no, but thank you for the update.
Yeah.
So just, Mr. Adams, if someone were to provide an in-kind service to us, is there anything specific that we need to be aware of?
I was actually at the meeting on Tuesday, and we talked about that. And Mrs. Fogel pointed out that, and I agree, it seems different, but it really isn't any different than when the PTO may provide some services in kind, and we thank them for it. And that's about all we probably should be doing in this circumstance, unless there was something ulterior that we can't predict, that they're trying to woo us for some reasons that they haven't articulated, other than doing something nice. And if that's all they're doing, which I think all we can see is that's what they're doing, there's no ill effect. We should be thanking them, and that's it.
Thank you, and thank them. Yes, I know. Wouldn't that be nice? All righty, so we are now on to new business, discussion and or vote to approve revised school start end times for early release days. Mr. Mitchell?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I was having a side conversation with Mrs. Teal. I didn't hear the question.
We're on to new business, the revised school start and end times.
All right. So let me just share what we have to date. There was a nice collaboration between the administration. In fact, administration was represented by Central Office Administration. The bus company was there, Mr. Prignano, Mrs. Fogel, Mr. Chandler, members of the teachers union, teachers, actually a couple of elementary teachers. Did I say principals? Principals too. Anyway, really nice collaboration to try and find a way to provide early release time for the elementary level. So we were able to come up with a schedule that provides that opportunity for elementary teachers, which is something, as you know, Madam Chair, that we've been really hoping to accomplish for some time. So the schedule that is being proposed at this time is the actual release time is provided by adding an additional 15 minutes onto the other 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And the way that the additional time has been added is that there will be 10 minutes added at the beginning. So 10 minutes, they'll start 10 minutes earlier at the elementary on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and they'll stay 5 minutes longer on those days as well. So that provides an hour's worth of time for professional development on Wednesday. So we're, one of the reasons why we have this on the agenda is because we know that parents need to know at the elementary level that this is happening so that they can plan accordingly. So, we're really excited, actually, that we're able to provide this opportunity for elementary teachers. And since I have been working in the district, this is, one thing that really has come up quite frequently, and this is something that they have asked for every year. So I'm really excited about the fact that we, through this collaboration, were able to come up with this schedule.
And this is anticipated to start in September?
Yes, Madam Chair. That's the goal.
So just for the record, it looks as though a number of schools will have a start time. There are 2 schools that will start. It might be better if you walk through this because I'm probably going to say it wrong, and you have looked at this more extensively than I have. So as far as like the early day and then the later day, how will that work?
Well, the major concern whenever, as you know, adjusting a schedule is transportation. So having the bus company involved in the conversation, it was critical to ensure that we would be able to get all of the students, to their respective schools on time. So I unfortunately, I don't have that document in front of me, Madam Chair. I apologize, but I don't know how else to say it except that the thinking was that we could do this by starting each of the elementary schools, and as you know, we have 3 that start at the same time and 2 that start at a different time, and by just adding 10 minutes onto the start of the school at all 5 of the elementary schools.
Yep.
And adding 5 minutes at the end of the day, it gets us to that 15 minutes, an additional 15 minutes of instructional time on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which provides the hour that we need for the early release time on Wednesday for elementary teachers.
Okay, so let me take a stab at this then. So it looks as though BF and Garvin have the same start time.
Yes.
Ashton Community and Cumberland Hill will have the same start time.
Yes.
BF will start at 8:30, right, with the first drop-off. Now, that's when kids can enter the school, right, at 8:20?
So the actual start time is 8:30.
8:30, okay. And then Ashton Community and Cumberland Hill would start at 9. Every day of the week, except for Wednesday, dismissal time at BF would be 2:55, same with Garvin. And then Ashton Community and Cumberland Hill would have their end day at 3:25, right? So 2:55 and 3:25. And then on Wednesday, BF and Garvin would dismiss at 1:50. Ashton Community and Cumberland Hill would dismiss at 2:20.
That is absolutely correct, and you did a much better job than I than I did of explaining that. That's correct.
Sure, I made a mistake here. Cumberland High School early release time is also in yellow. How is that changing?
Well, we discovered when calculating minutes that they were actually the number of minutes was longer than it should have been, so we adjusted that time. I think it's only 5 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah,
10 minutes.
I see. Okay. So, discussion by the committee? Mr. Fiorello.
Are there any other districts that have early release for elementary schools?
They're staying the same. High school just had a minor adjustment at the back end of its time.
Yeah, well, I'm 99% sure that the district, my former district, Charahoe, has early release time for all. They don't have it every week, but I don't. They may have it every week now, but I know that they had it for everybody. K-12 at all 3 levels had early release time, and I'm sure that there are other districts that are doing it too.
What if I know I know that our L teachers don't have the common planning time currently. What do other districts do to provide common planning time, or they just don't have it either?
Well, I mean, I think they have to be creative in the way that they do it. So, I mean, there may be additional time tagged onto their contractual day that they get paid for, that sort of thing. So I think it would be those kinds of, those kinds of changes to a schedule or additions to a schedule that it would have to accommodate common planning time, because teachers are required by regulation to have common planning time.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I'm not done.
Mr. Salvatore. So that changed.
My other question would be, though, nothing has gone out to the parents to be made aware of this change, which I think is a huge change for some parents. So I'm hesitant to vote on this tonight. I know we're kind of under the gun with, our meeting schedule and the start of school time and everything else, but stop kicking me. That's all.
Mr. Denon.
Mr. Mitchell, did you get a sense from the school bus company? I don't know if can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I can.
Did you get a sense from Durham about when the last students would be getting off the bus? Because under the current schedule, they get off after 4 o'clock. And that's actually a bus leaving community at 3:23, which doesn't jive with the time. The bus time at community currently was 3:40. So it seems like they're leaving, 17 minutes early and getting home after 4 o'clock. And I don't know I guess I share the same concern that Mr. Fiorillo expressed, that we need to let people know about this change. I don't want students getting off the bus later than 4 if we can avoid it.
Mr. Salvatore.
Also, Mr. Mitchell, is there a cost impact here? And
No, and that was, one of the reasons why we had.
So no additional buses?
No.
Okay.
And when's our next regular meeting? It's... Oh, that would be that's too late. Yes.
So, Mr. Fiorillo and Mr. Denner, what's the holdup? I know, to notify the parents?
Well, there's no one here to speak on it because they didn't know about it. I think that's one thing.
I'm just wondering if it gets passed tonight, notification will go out?
Well, I mean, I think it's important for us to let parents know, but this is one of those things where...
If it doesn't get passed, we're going to...
Well, I mean, if it doesn't get passed, then I think we got a problem, because we're looking at, people are going to find out the first or second week in August that this is going to be happening. That this is going to be happening. I just think that the earlier that we can decide on this, the better, so that parents will have an opportunity to make the necessary arrangements. And one of the things that we can do, I know that there's a concern, just to address Mr. Denon's concern about, the time that students will actually be getting home. First of all, as I mentioned several times already, the bus company was sitting at the table, and if there are issues around that concern, the time that students are actually walking in the door at the end of the day, then we have a responsibility to address it. I just think that the benefit that we get from a teaching and learning standpoint by doing this is tremendous, and I just think that, the sooner that we can make the decision, the better. And, this is one of those things, because it's such a significant change, or a perceived significant change, I think it's going to be a little unsettling, but like anything else, in short order, people will adjust accordingly.
Mr. Mitchell, Madam Chair. Mr. Mitchell, I can say that my daughter went to Ashton last year, and by the first couple of weeks or 3 weeks of school, she was getting off the bus a little bit past 4. By the time it started to become common practice, she was getting home about 25 minutes to 4. So I know there's always that,
right? Yeah, I think at the start of the school year, unfortunately, those things happen, but it's understandable.
Madam Chair, my recommendation is to pass this tonight so we can build awareness to the parents. And then if we do need to make modifications, I would think it would come back to us, and we can make a modification to it. Thank you.
Mr. Denham?
Mr. Mitchell, do we have any sense from the bus company how this will affect getting the schedules for the buses out? Like, will it delay them? Can we have them sooner rather than later?
Well, if the school committee supports this recommendation, I'll get on the phone tomorrow and let them know that, we want that information, accurate information, to be available as soon as possible.
I know that's an issue every summer, and people find out the bus schedule right before school starts. So anything we can do to
expedite that,
to fix that. Thank you.
Mr. Fiorello?
Mr. Mitchell, you just said that we're required to allow all teachers to have common planning time, but elementary teachers really have never had common planning time? Is that correct?
Well, no, they have found ways, and Tina, you can help me with this too, if you don't mind, but they are required to do it. So what they do is, some schools do it at the end of the day, some schools do it at the beginning of the day. Tina, can you help with that?
During last negotiations, we added common planning time for elementary teachers into the contract. Originally, we had started with before and after the contractual day during negotiations, but then embedded it into the actual during the course of the day. So many teachers piggybacked it with their lunch and things like that. That's what we were trying to avoid, because the elementary teachers do not enjoy that, do not enjoy having to do common planning time during their lunch period. And so this is one of the things that we're trying to avoid, is giving them a designated common planning time so that there's equity across the district, so that they get that same hour-ish, 50-minute block like the middle and the high school teachers get, to really have some really valued common planning time, one time a week, that they can really do some work with Fidelity, with the administrators, and with their team. And so they've been begging for it. They've been asking us for ways to do it, and so that's why we worked with the team of elementary teachers to try and get this to work. So they've been doing it for the last 3 years, and Tony can even speak to that as a building administrator, that they've been doing it for the last 3 years during the course of this contract.
Mrs. Fogel, you're speaking very quickly and very softly. Could you just repeat like the last little minute of stuff?
Sure. I'm very sorry. I always do that. What I said was, for the last 3 years, at least during this contract, elementary teachers have been doing common planning time. Typically, they do it during, I would say that a lot of times they do it during a lunch. If they do share an itinerant block, maybe they all have, art, music, library. If that works out for maybe one of the bigger schools, then they do it during that period of time. But for the last 3 years, the elementary teachers have been doing common planning time, and they've been sharing that work with their building administrator. But they have been begging for some real time that they can work together to get some really valued time per week. And that's why we're trying to do it so that across the district, elementary, middle, and high school has that time with Fidelity that they can concentrate on just common planning time instead of maybe trying to eat their lunch and plan with a team.
Mr. Mitchell, was it discussed at any point about initiating this activity perhaps January 1 instead of September 1 or first day of school? That way, I mean, if the conversation with the bus company is we just move the routes, 20 minutes early, this allows them time to plan and maintain the existing route, obviously with probably some minor modification, but also allows parents the time to plan. I know it's not the perfect scenario because teachers are still eating lunch doing common planning time, but is that a feasible option?
We actually haven't thought of that. And I don't want to be unkind, but if a decision is made now, people would have a month and a half to decide how to meet that change. I guess we could consider something like that. Yeah, I think it's I do think it would be more of a problem to. I guess I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but I do think that it may be more disruptive starting it in the middle of the school year as opposed to the beginning of the school year. So, I think this is one of those things where like anything else, after you do it for a while, it's like that after a year, no one even gives it a second thought. I think there might be some grumbling initially, but...
Madam Chair? Oh.
Mr. Fiorello, then Mr. Wood, then Mr. Denner.
Mr. Mitchell, how would we, if we were to pass it tonight, how would we reach out to the parents? I'm assuming the usual.
Well, certainly we could get the word out we could use a number of different
the usual
strategies. But
phone
calls. We could certainly do a phone call, or we could,
you know,
or a combination of things
Yeah.
to get the word out.
I just dislike kind of doing something before parents have been notified at least, but I think this is going to happen. So I don't really see any need to prolong it. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. So.
Mr. Wood.
I would agree with Mr. Mitchell. I think if it's going to be done, it should be done at the beginning of the school year. People will adapt to it more if it's done at the beginning and not somewhere in the middle. But again, I think what we're concerned about is getting the word out to the parents. And if we have the administration actually, or maybe over-advertise this. I mean, put it wherever we can, websites, Valley Breeze, just to make sure that it's out there. I mean, there's, 6 weeks before school starts? And if we get it out every week and we keep telling it and communicating it, I think it'll be the people that want to pay attention to it will pay attention to it. The ones that want to complain about it will complain about it, and we'll go on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Mr. Denon.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I think having an early release day for middle school and for high school is very different than for kindergartners. I think it's parents may have a hard time figuring out what their kindergartner will do if we do this. Thank you.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mitchell, field trips, activities, anything on that, after-school program, teachers' notification, union concerns, all that worked out, anything? Do we have any concerns of any kind?
Are you referring to like Alpha Best or that sort of thing? I know that Mrs. Copens is aware of this, and we don't anticipate any issues with that, but certainly we'll have that conversation. Should the school committee approve this, we'll get on that tomorrow.
Because, Madam Chair, because Mr. Mitchell, it's going to cut down on the amount of time that Alpha Best has their programs, correct?
They added on Wednesday.
But, okay.
Might
And
lengthen it on Wednesday, yeah.
Added by Wednesday. Okay,
We're
thank
just
you.
guessing, yeah. Okay, so I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Discussion and or vote to approve revised school start end times for early release days. Pleasure of the committee.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion for passage.
Mr. Salvatore moves passage. Second by Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that's 6-1 with Mr. Denon against. Oh, I did it again. 5-1.
We could call Paul.
Yes, Mr. DeMonica. All righty. Next item is discussion and or vote to approve amended policies. Yes, that's you. So we have G1, we have I-10, and then we have I-7. Mr. Fiorello, J7. No. All yours.
G1, Affirmative Action Plan / Equal Opportunity. This is a plan that we essentially update every single year. We essentially just really change dates and change the names of the people that are like the superintendent and the contact person for the affirmative action officer. But this year we also changed a little bit of language. What we have done is we have taken out the word sex and replaced it with gender. And also to reflect our new transgender policy, we have included language for gender expression to protect those employees or possible employees that are expressing their gender differently than. I'm just going to stop right there, actually.
Good idea.
So we've just tried to make the affirmative action plan a little more progressive. We are still going above and beyond what the federal government requires, and I would make a motion to pass G1, the affirmative action plan.
Mr. Fiorello moves G1 affirmative action plan as amended, right? You amended the policy from a previous one. Do you have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
And we have I-10, one of our favorites. I-10, extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips. This is really more of a housekeeping matter. We realized that there was a unintentional section left out discussing housing, which is in the other policy, which is, I'm sorry, Mrs. Fogel, what's the other policy number? I-6. And it deals with housing as far as hotel arrangements, in some very rare cases, even residential homes, just so that we had the addresses would be notified and common language that's in the other policy but just got left out of this policy. So I would make a motion to approve the amended policy I-10 extracurricular school-sponsored overnight field trips.
Mr. Fiorello moves passage of the amended policy. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
And another favorite, J7, student suspension. At the request of Mr. Denon, the administration added a section of definitions of what is an in-school suspension and an out-of-school suspension. So those were added to the policy, and actually those will have to be added to the school handbooks as well, because I believe they are different than what's in one of the handbooks. But that's something else we're going to be taking up in the future. So that is the only change to student suspension, I believe. Mrs. Fogel, can you correct me on this? Is that the only addition to the suspension policy?
Well, no. We've
been
had
dealing with
many
this for so long.
iterations prior to the last time that it's come
Right.
before the committee. We've added the progressive.
Right. So quite honestly, this is the only change since the last few
Approval.
meetings that we've had on this.
Yep.
And I think the suspension policy is where we feel it needs to be right now. It has the full support of the administration, and I would move passage of J7 student suspension as amended.
Mr. Fiorello moves passage of J7. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Second by Mr. Denon. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you for adding that. I think Mr. Fiorello summarized it, but the policy benefited by having some definitions of what in-school suspension was and out-of-school suspension. If you read it without the definitions, you might not know. So thank you.
And it's no longer in suspension anymore. All righty. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Next item, discussion and/or vote to rescind teacher non-renewal recommendations. Mrs. Fogel, we had those before us in executive session, and there were 3.
There's 4.
4.
So this evening, we are making a recommendation to rescind 4 non-renewals.
Pleasure of the committee on the action.
Make a motion to accept.
Mr. Denon accepts the recommendation. Second by Mr. Fiorillo. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fogel. Next item on the agenda is SC PR 7 2016-10, LED lighting installation, CHS parking lot and building exterior. Mr. Denon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was discussed Tuesday night in fiscal. It's a resolution empowering the Cumberland School Committee to award to E&E Systems of Canton, Mass. For lighting retrofits for the Cumberland High School parking lot, outside building lights for a total in amount not to exceed $70,193.00. The reason for doing this, there are a few reasons. Energy efficiency is probably the topmost reason. It's expected to save us just over $13,737 each year, so that is about a 5-year payback. So after 5 years, we will have saved money in energy costs. They'll look better. I think the lights that are out there now are, as Mr. Prignano likes to say, they're full of moths, many of them, and another thing that's important, I think, is light pollution. These are going to have reduced light pollution, so for the neighbors who live in the area, hopefully will help them. So I move passage.
Mr. Denon moves passage of the resolution, and that's seconded by Mr. Fiorillo. Mayor, did you want to add something in between this or after?
This caught my eye. I actually was not here for this, and mainly to hear about the budget. But on the budget, by the way, there is most likely not going to be a meeting in July, so the budget, you coming forward again for the opening of the budget would be in August. I believe it's the 15th, just to let you know. The lighting, I'll make 2 recommendations. One, that when you have anything that has to do with the facilities, we should be in coordination, the town and the schools. In this case, we're working on a major lighting program for the entire town. It's going to take a little while. We're underway now with an audit. Eventually, they're going to look at all our facilities, all our streets for special lighting. It's a huge savings, and I bring this, if it's really important and you have to do it, what'd you say, $80,000? I don't know what the other bids came in. I have no idea whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. I just want to bring it to your attention that we do have this program going, and I'm moving pretty fast on it because of some other issues. We have a second audit that will be probably agreed upon to be done starting in September at the latest. That audit will be for them to look at every facility and again street in the town and recommend what they want to do. So if you feel it's an emergency, I think you have to act. If you don't, I would make a strong suggestion to hold and see what we can do as the entire town. If you have any questions, but yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mayor, for coming out, and also Councilman Bradley back there. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, is this something that the town is willing for us if we were to hold off on this and include it in part of the audit?
The town is going to buy the lights. It would be part of that program. Now, how we break it up and how we charge or whatever, that's another statement. But at the time of us, we will buy the lights, and the town will own the lights and maintain the lights.
So, Mr. Mayor, you could include all of our schools within this?
As I said, they're going to look at all our facilities.
Okay.
And the schools are part of our facilities.
Okay.
And that will be, I don't know what their recommendation will be. They're going to look at our parks as an example also, so that we have a complete, and that was the one reason I wanted to get into it, so we have a complete review of all our lighting. Right now we have 3,800 lights in the town. Many of them are obsolete, bad word. There's a lot of obsolete, which is what we're trying to track now, and then we'll move forward and get their recommendation.
And Mr. Mayor, again, I'm not putting you on the spotlight. I'm just trying to
You'll
understand.
never put me on the spot.
I forgot my question now.
Say?
Oh, timeline, just a ballpark.
I wish I could give it to you. We're going to move ahead on the second audit.
I mean,
Trying
do you
to
think
move
6
faster.
months?
Could be close to 6 months to a year. We have to buy the lights, and as a town, so it could be upwards to a year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay? Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sure.
It seems like a large expense for the town. I'm just curious.
It is.
In what, I'm sure you already have an idea, at least in the back of your head, of how you would pay for it.
we do.
Would it be a bond? Is there money that you already have?
No, it'll probably be under a master lease,
Oh, okay.
because it's a payback within 3 years, and to go out, obviously, in a bond that would be over a period of probably 10 years or longer.
Right.
So the master lease is what most of the towns are doing, and that's what our attempt is. We really don't have a figure. We know they could save us quite a bit of money in the town, and I'm talking like 70% of what we're paying now.
Right.
But it's an upgrade because, again, and you mentioned it, the lights are going to be an improvement. Currently, all the old lights that are out there, everything shines up into the sky, so you don't have the visibility. These are all brand-new LED lights, and the focus on it. I think it was in the Breeze that they showed that picture of before and after, and it's quite a change.
Okay.
So that's what it is.
Madam Chair, I'm going to actually remove my second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Salvatore.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Denon, okay.
I'll second, Madam Chair, for discussion.
Second. Mr. Prignano or Mr. Mitchell, is there any expectation around, is there an urgent reason committed in short time?
No, there's not an urgent reason. We've done North Cumberland and McCourt parking lots have LED lighting now. And the high school, we wanted to do the high school. There's some savings here. Also, curb appeal. We have lights that, like I said, Mr. Denon said, the globes are all melted from the lights inside, and it's half full of moths that they're just not appealing. I was wondering if, and I'm not sure who they is they like National Grid or whatever for the town? Could we have someone look at our proposal and see if it makes sense to go forward with our proposal or to wait? If they have someone to look at it.
I think that's acceptable.
Just send it to us, and I'll have somebody do it.
And then they maybe can look at it right away and say, no, you got a good proposal. We don't think we could do any better here. Go ahead with your proposal, or...
Understood.
Oh,
That's
wait.
reasonable. Mr. Salvatore, do you want to read? Yes.
Well, I'm just going to say I'm going to be voting a no on this, Madam Chair, in light of the situation that the mayor brought forward. I suggest that we do take advantage of that, send the proposal over, and see if we can fit in all the lights within the school under the town, since the town's going to be, probably funding it 100%, right, Mayor?
I don't think you got a yes on that one.
I'm just kidding, Mayor.
You can withdraw your
But
second.
I do withdraw my second,
and then we
Madam
can.
Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Salvatore,
That's what he said, they would be funded. What are you kidding? Yeah,
I have a question.
ma'am.
So I made the motion. Does it make sense to pass it with that contingency or just
no,
not pass it?
we can table it.
Okay, so I withdraw my motion.
And do you move to table it?
I'll make a motion to table it indefinitely.
Why don't we table it to the next meeting, just put it on the next agenda, and maybe in the meantime, we'll have some information from the town, and then the next meeting, we could always table it again if they, but at least it's on if we want to take an action.
Thank you. So you move to table it to the next meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So that's unanimous. 6-0. Next item on the agenda is progress payment for health and safety summer projects at Joseph L. McCourt, and that's SCPR 7, 2016-11. Mr. Denon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was also discussed in fiscal on Tuesday night, and it's, I mentioned it earlier, it's a partial payment for the work that's been done at McCourt, North Cumberland, and Ashton. So it's SCPR 7, 2016-11, a resolution empowering the school committee to authorize payment to E&E Systems of Canton, Mass. For general contracting of the health and safety improvements to Joseph L. McCourt Middle School, North Cumberland Middle School, and Ashton School in an amount not to exceed $1,789,071.19. This is for all the work that's happening this summer and happened over the previously, and I move passage.
Mr. Denon moves passage of SCPR 7, 2016-11. And what's the revenue source on this? I'm sorry.
The lease from the town.
The lease, I see.
So, Mr. Prignano, do you send...
This is coming from the town's $5 million lease that they've issued from us, so this payment would then be forwarded to the finance director to pay the bill from that lease.
Thank you.
And Mr. Sylvia was at our meeting, and he said no problem. You know,
Mr. Wood, do you have a question? Yes.
In the notes, it says $1,789,071.19, but it also says that the town held back 5%, which would be $1,699,617. What are we paying? Which one? The 17 or the 16?
$1,699,000.
So that's what what we should be, the motion should be for?
$789,000, there'll be a 5% retainage that he'll get later on, so we should approve it. They'll withhold it for now and pay him down the road so that we don't have to come back to ask for that money again.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Mr. Denon?
What are we on next?
Number 3, SCPR 7, 2016-12. Doesn't Mr. DeMonica make it look easy?
He does. He does.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was discussed. This is a resolution authorizing and empowering the school committee to execute a purchase order to 3D Construction Company of Providence, Rhode Island for cement repairs at community school and the high school in the amount not to exceed $16,600. At subcommittee, we actually amended this to strike the high school from this resolution because this work is entirely at community school. So I will make a motion to amend this, since it wasn't updated in our folders, to strike the high school.
So Mr. Denon moves passage of SCPR 7, 2016-12 as amended. Second. No, he moves to amend it.
I moved to amend it first. Yep.
Okay, so he moves to amend it.
I wasn't going to question the chair.
Second by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. You can question the chair because she's getting a little warm up here.
Yeah.
And then you move passage?
I move passage of this resolution as amended.
And do I have a second? Second by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item, SCR 2016-10, the pool contract renewal. Come on, keep up.
I know. Sorry. This was discussed in subcommittee on Tuesday night. This is a resolution empowering the school committee to award a 3-year contract, July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2019, with options to renew to Envious Swimming for operating the high school pool. There was one date in this resolution that we did change in subcommittee. I don't see it offhand. The end date needed to be changed to match what it says in the resolution, which would be June 30th, 2019. So I don't know if you want to talk about Mr. Prignano can fill us in a little bit about the pool contract.
Yeah, sure. Over the last year or so, we've heard from different school committee members, different concerns they had about the contract with the pool, one of them being public swim. That the public swim that was being offered to the community, I guess, was just in the daytime, not at night, and other areas of the contract. So we've tried to listen to some of the concerns that we've had. We've increased the revenue amount. We do about 32, 33, I think 33.6 is the revenue we're getting this year. This will end up moving up to 55,000 in the third year. It goes up 10,000 next year, then another 5, and then it'll be up to 55,000. There's a provision that was put in that if revenues reach a certain dollar amount, $250,000 of gross revenues, not net, that the school department would share in anything above that. At 25, we would get 25% of any revenues above that to kind of protect us if, pools are such a business that a pool can close in an area. And I think what happened in the first couple of years of his contract, the Attleboro pool was closed, and all you saw were Massachusetts cars here swimming in our pool, So that provision was put in. A provision that he'll provide $5,000 a year towards capital repairs, and if there are no capital repairs that need to be done that year, that money would be kept in a separate account for future repairs. Because it's a pool, there are going to be repairs needed. There's a provision for him to replace the filter if it goes. Now, we haven't wanted to because the filter that, even though it's old in our pool, it's still better than any filter you could pretty much, I guess, buy today. And so if the filter were to break in the first year, he'd be responsible for 80% of the cost. If it broke in the second year, he'd be responsible for 2/3 of the cost, and then the last year, 1/3 of the cost, and we would pay 2/3. Some other provisions in there. I'm just trying to think of the highlights of the contract. He would. One of the things that Mr. DeMonica brought up and passed along to me that he thought he'd like to see in it was that he thought the pool vendor should pay for the water bill. And so he will pay up to the water bill the last couple of years has been, I've checked the water bill, it's been anywhere between $3,500 and $5,000. So he's agreed to pay $4,000 a year of the water bill that he'll pay on a monthly basis in his rent, and then we'll settle up in June, depending on what the number has to be. And that water bill that $4,000 would increase by any water increases. So if the water board passed a 2% increase in the rates, his number would go to $4,200 and stuff, so that he stays up with the incremental cost of that water bill. So I'd say those are probably five of the bigger highlights that were in the bill that are in the. I think we tried to address most of the concerns that members had passed along to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I make a motion that we amend the contract. In section 3.2, it says, in the event the school committee does not affirmatively vote to extend or renew this agreement, the agreement is hereby terminated as of June 30th, and it should say 2016. Currently says, it should say 2019. It currently says 2016. So I make a motion that we amend it.
Mr. Denon amends the contract, and Mr. Salvatore approves that. You can tell my brain's boiling up here.
Seconds it.
Seconds it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so 6-0. Keep going, and then you have to approve.
Yes, so I forgot to say that this was approved 3-0 in fiscal. I make a motion that we approve SCR 2016-10.
As amended. All right, then second by Mr. Fiorello. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. How do you get 6 school committee members to just rifle through the rest of the agenda? You just heat the room up. Yes, Mr. Salvatore?
Mr. Chandler, maybe we can change these lights to LEDs. I feel like I'm in a pizza oven up here.
I feel like I'm...
Check with Alex. We'll give you an ROI on it. I don't know, something.
I make a motion we meet somewhere else in August.
Yes.
We'll
feel
approve
like
the
a
lighting
moth
project
on a light
here.
bulb. Okay, so we have personnel recommendations. Mrs. Fogel, loud and clear, and let's move it along.
I'll be slow, I promise. Well, I mean, not slow, but... Good evening. So I just have a few. So I have a resignation. I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the retirement of Ann Gorman, actually, it's a resignation, not a retirement. I said resignation and then read retirement, of Ann Gorman, school psychologist, Ashton Elementary School and Cumberland Hill Elementary School, effective June 30th, after 8 years of service.
motion to approve the resignation. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Those opposed? And go on.
And then I have a leave of absence. I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the unpaid leave of absence of Kiara Tracy, grade 3 teacher at community school for the 2016-17 school year.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Denon. Second by Mr. Fiorello. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries.
And lastly, I have an appointment. So I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the appointment of Laura Hennessy, formerly Spino. She got married, so just so. Grade 3 teacher at community school, effective August 26, 2016. Full-time, step 9. No lane, 22% currently. Obviously, we're in negotiations. So this will be 1 year, just so you guys know. Laura was displaced from her position, and so she chose not to participate in the matrix so that she could stay at community school, knowing that Kara was going to go out on the leave. So she decided to take Kara's position, knowing that it was only for a 1 year position. So she's going to take this position, knowing that she'll be displaced at the end of the year. So I just wanted to what we were doing. So
thank you.
Make a motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Denon, second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Vogel.
thank you.
We have school committee comments, school liaison reports. We've heard a lot of complaints this evening about the heat.
Yeah.
Anything else? Mr. Fiorello?
I just wanted to mention that back in June when we did some retirements, I had failed to just say something about Mrs. Saunders, who was a teaching assistant at BF Norton. She worked at the school district, I forget. Tina, do you remember how many years? 17 years. Nice lady, great disposition to be with kids every single day, and the building will definitely miss her. So I wish her well.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. And for the record, I did hear from Mr. Demotica. He said, great job.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Fiorello?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn by Mr. Fiorello. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And we are adjourned at 10:32.